We may differ in opinion on many issues, likes, dislikes, or preferences, but one thing we all agree on is our mutual love for the incomparable Johnnie Taylor. This is when music was music. Undoubtedly, Sam Cooke's protege, Johnnie Taylor, was hardcore, yet charming, a chap who was blessed with awesome pipes and bucket loads of soul. He was that one person who could take you up and through there. His unique blend of soulful and raspy vocals, coupled with heartfelt lyrics, resonated with many, both nationally and internationally. He could perform a wide variety of genres, be it rhythm and blues, soul, gospel, pop, doo-wop, disco, you bring it on. He was that man. It is to no surprise that whenever the names the Philosopher of Soul and the Blues Wailer are mentioned, the only person you see is Johnnie Taylor. He was the first artist ever to go platinum for his single hit, Disco Lady. He exceeded gold status, so they had to create a whole new level to place him in. That's how massive he was. And yet, as much as we agree on all these, it kind of feels that this gentleman is greatly underrated and often overlooked. I mean, his name is still missing in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame list. Is it because we are always quick to overlook all the talent or strengths one has in their drawer and harshly judge that person for that one wrong turn they take in this uncertain life? One fact in life is that it has no manual, and no one is perfect. With how fast life is going right now, the best thing we could do is be considerate with one another. Rather than criticize where we see fault, let's use it as lessons to know what paths not to cross and what roads not to take. Johnnie definitely had some faults. One of them was he loved the women, many of them, and the women equally loved him back. With this came responsibilities that proved to be too much for him. Fathering not less than 10 children from multiple women meant he couldn't be present in all their lives. Some had to be neglected, whether knowingly or unknowingly. And this in turn turned chaotic later on in their quest to inherit his estate valued at around $2 million at the time of his death. The big question remains, did he sire all of them knowingly, or did the ladies, who were undoubtedly carried away by his charm, make that big decision by themselves without his consent? But most importantly, before we dive deep into this, let's get to know how this cat got to beat all the odds to become the best version of himself. This is the untold story of Johnnie Harrison Taylor. Johnnie was born on May 5, 1934 in Crawfordsville, a town in Crittenden County, Arkansas, as the last of 3 siblings to Willie Taylor and Ida Mae Jackson. It is said that his parents separated while he was very young, while others point out that his father may have been called to serve the country in World War II. With this, he had to be raised by his grandmother in the rural areas of West Memphis, a neighborhood that the likes of the legendary Howlin' Wolf and Junior Parker lived. His grandmother was one not to play with and took her faith seriously, never failing to attend church on Sundays, always tagging along a young Johnnie. It is in church that a young Johnnie developed a liking to music and started singing in the choir as early as age 6. He became so good that the preacher carried him every time he hit the road so that he could sing before the sermons. As time went by, his confidence grew to a point that even when the rest were busy in the cotton fields during the week, he would play no part, as he firmly believed that his voice, not his hands, was his ticket out of poverty. In around 1947, just after World War II, the booming Kansas City annexed more land, and African Americans were no longer restricted to living in most areas of the city, as employment opportunities were in abundance. This prompted many of the African American families from nearby struggling cities to move here. Among these families were Johnnie Taylor's, who together with his grandmother joined his mother, who had moved in the city before them. Taylor then joined a gospel group called the Melody Kings. It is through the group that he got to know and befriend a number of famous artists, among them the legendary Sam Cooke, his mentor. He even began imitating his singing style. On top of the voice, how Sam Cooke carried himself and how ambitious he was were things Johnnie admired too. He began to talk and walk like him. It is to no surprise that when news broke that Sam Cooke was leaving the Highway QCs to replace Harris at the Soul Stars, he immediately left the Melody Kings and moved to Chicago to audition for the QC's lead role. During his apprenticeship with the Highway QCs, he felt he needed to put into good use his huge idle time to earn something extra for survival. And that's when he bumped into a doo-wop group called the Five Echoes, who were desperately looking to replace second tenor Tommy Hunt, who had been drafted by the United States Air Force. With Taylor on board, the Five Echoes recorded So Lonesome under Sabre Records, where he took second lead. The song became a local hit, and the group became regulars in the Chicago club circuit, also touring the Midwestern US. In late 1954, the Five Echoes moved over to VJ Records on Cottage Grove in Chicago, where they recorded Tell Me Baby, a song written by Johnny himself, and the unreleased Evil Woman with Johnny taking lead. The group would go on to disband shortly after. By May 1955, Johnny was ready to record with the Highway QCs, and on May 22nd, Johnny and the QCs recorded 4 songs, 3 of which, the almost a cappella Every Man, Woman and Child, the soul-scorching big seller Somewhere to Lay My Head, and the bluesy Nobody Knows were led by him. Other songs include I Dreamed That Heaven Was Like This and He Lifted My Burdens, which were released as singles but did not make many hits. In around late 1956, Sam Cooke dropped a bombshell. He announced his departure from the Soul Stars and was crossing over to secular music as a solo artist. And who else was close to filling his shoes in the Soul Stars? Yes, that's right, his protege, Johnnie Taylor. Before this, Johnny Jones of the Swanee Quartet had tried to fill Sam's shoes to no success. So in early 1958, Leroy Kroom was sent on a mercy mission. His job was to convince Johnnie Taylor to join the Soul Stars. Leroy was actually the one who fronted Taylor's name, as he felt he sounded much like Sam Cooke, and in came Johnnie Taylor. Many had doubts in his ability, but he proved them wrong, making a name for himself when he recorded the beautiful The Love of God with the group featuring Paul Foster Sr.
The love of God guides me along.
And as he seemed to be on an upward trajectory, life had other plans. His toying with the secular side of the world meant that sooner or later it was going to interfere with his gospel career. Since his days with the QCs, spending his afternoons at Sam Cooke's house had driven him to a different path. They would spend most of their time with girls enjoying themselves. Johnny's free spirit soon landed him in problems in 1960 when he ran over and fatally injured a young girl who ran in front of the group's car while he was driving. And even though the investigations concluded it was an accident, it was discovered that he had been driving under the influence of marijuana. Realizing this was the end of the road for him with the group, he quit. Seeking redemption, he became a Baptist preacher going by the name the Reverend Johnnie Taylor, formerly with the Soul Stars, moving from church to church around Chicago. By 1961, he was back with the group briefly, but it was revealed that he had a girl. The group decided enough was enough and that it was now too much, so they let him go. Johnny then decided to follow his friend Sam Cooke to Los Angeles to continue with the ministry. Things were not looking good for him, as he was really struggling financially. Sam advised him to cross over. To make matters even better for him, this period coincided with Sam Cooke going independent by partnering with James Woody Alexander to form SAR Records. Sam Cooke signed him as one of the first artists on the label. His first solo single was A Whole Lot of Woman in 1961. Other notable early R&B recordings were the hit Rome Wasn't Built in a Day, 1962, a record that had him sound exactly like Sam Cooke, and Baby We've Got Love, 1963, which was his first song to appear on Billboard magazine's Top 100 chart. Johnny was now becoming famous, and the secular side allowed him to fully quench his thirst for earthly pleasures without the guilt or the fear of being judged. His love for money also drove him to something else: pimping. He used to pimp as a way of earning extra income, and he sure dressed the part, driving in limos and whatnot. But the shocking death of his mentor on December 11th, 1964 took a toll on him. He even considered going back to his calling in ministry. Sam Cooke's death led to the automatic folding of the SR label, making matters even worse for him. While he was still drowning in his sorrows, it dawned on him that he was still a nobody in the industry and had to do something to change this. He had to survive. While doing his research, trying to find ways that would make him visible for the record labels, he stumbled upon something interesting. A Gregory native by the name Little Johnnie Taylor had released a song by the name Part-Time Love, which had become a hit, reaching #1 on the Billboard R&B chart for 1 week. With the similarities in their names, and the fact that at that time the majority never really knew their faces as they were never on TV, he decided to build his name using Little Johnnie Taylor's fame. He did a cover for the song and arranged tours to popularize himself. This move proved to be a genius one, as in 1966, Stax Records in Memphis, Tennessee, a label that had the legendary Otis Redding as its face, signed him. At Stax, Taylor polished his musical style, which combined gospel, R&B, and blues, as well as his flamboyant appearance. And when Otis Redding died from a plane crash in 1967, the label turned to him to be the face. Otis was someone he had learnt a lot from, and the two had developed a great friendship. How he set the mood for Otis's tribute in the funeral service at the City Auditorium in Macon on the 18th of December tells you everything you need to know about how he felt about his friend's loss. Back to music, Stax putting him at the front as their face was a game changer for him. He put in the work and didn't disappoint, proceeding to become one of the label's top-selling performers, outselling even Otis Redding and other big stars like Carla Thomas. He had a prolific run on the R&B charts, beginning with I Had a Dream, 1966. His first song on the Stax label to break the Pop Top 100 was Somebody's Sleeping in My Bed, 1967. In 1968, Taylor had his first major crossover pop and R&B hit in Who's Making Love, a funk soul song that went to #1 on the R&B charts and hit #5 on the pop charts. The success of Who's Making Love enabled Taylor to hire a superb permanent touring band for the first time in his career, and he became a major performer at the Chitlin circuit all across the South. Subsequent hits included Take Care of Your Homework, 1969, Jodie's Got Your Girl and Gone, 1971, I Believe in You, You Believe in Me, 1972, and our mother's favorite, Cheaper to Keep Her, 1973. By this time, he had perfected his style of smooth, soulful crooning, which incorporated gospel, blues, and soul. And his songs, which many greatly resonated with, earned him the title, the Philosopher of Soul. The songs not only entertained you, but they also carried with them a message. When Stax Records went bankrupt in 1975, Taylor signed with CBS Columbia Records. In 1976, with Don Davis in charge of production, he released his first CBS album titled Eargasm, which contained his biggest hit, Disco Lady, which went to #1 on both the R&B and pop charts and became the first single ever to be certified platinum, selling more than 2 million copies. CBS pushed him to record more tunes in the disco genre, not taking advantage of the full range of his talent. His record sales slipped, and he began to look for another label. In 1982, Taylor signed with the short-lived Beverly Glen Records, joining Bobby Womack and Anita Baker, and got back on the R&B charts with What About My Love.
What about my love? See, you have forgotten.
In 1984, he signed with Malaco Records and became one of its most popular artists. He released a succession of hit R&B albums for the label, beginning with This Is Your Night. His 1996 album, Good Love, topped Billboard's blues charts on the strength of the single Last $2, and the album became the biggest seller in Malaco history. Taylor released his final album, Gotta Get the Groove Back, in 1999. In that same year, he was given a Pioneer Award by the Rhythm and Blues Foundation. Away from recording, Johnnie Taylor worked as a DJ on KKDA, a radio station in the Dallas area where he had made his home. The station's format was mostly R&B and soul oldies, and their on-the-air personalities were often local R&B, soul, blues, and jazz musicians. During his time here, he was billed as the wailer Johnnie Taylor. But going hand in hand with his successful career was his problems. One of them was drugs. He was a heavy user and often found himself on the wrong side of the law. In 1970, he was arrested in Nassau, Bahamas, and spent 3 months in jail for the possession of drugs, a revolver, and brass knuckles. Reports also claim that his death at Charlton Methodist Hospital in Dallas, Texas, on May 31, 2000, after suffering a heart attack in his home in Duncanville, a suburb of Dallas, was allegedly due to a drug overdose. He would go on to be buried at Forest Hill Cemetery in Kansas City, Missouri, beside his mother. His unexpected death also exposed his other problem. He had been with many women during his heydays and had sired tons of children with many different women, out of which he had only accepted 6 of them, keeping the others unknown. The question, if he knew about the unknown children, and he preferred to hide this information, or that the ladies kept it away from him, only he knows. But this really hurt his loved ones. He didn't have a written will with him, and all those who were believed to be his children, both known and unknown, came guns out in a battle of Johnnie Taylor's estate, believed to be worth $2 million at the time of his death. The battle became ugly to a point that it went this close to his body being exhumed for the purpose of taking DNA samples. The rest is history. He may have had his shortcomings and all that, but the way he made us feel, the way he put the emotions in his songs, will always outmuscle the negatives. He knew what to say and how to say it. Whenever we hear that wailing sound of his, it reminds us of those sweet, nostalgic moments when life had meaning. Those unforgettable weekends when we would do cleaning as a family dancing to his tunes. Those days when our extended family members would come over for barbecue. Those times when Grandma would hum to the songs every time she was sewing. Those times when we actually saw our fathers sing joyfully to our mothers. We could go on and on. But the fact remains, Johnnie Taylor only gave us good memories, and that's what matters. And even though his name is still missing in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame alongside other greats like him, it doesn't change the fact that to us, he will always be one of the best to have ever done it. He may be always overlooked and greatly underrated, but he surely knows how high we will always rank him. Rest in peace and power, Uncle Johnnie.